The Golden Oldies Guesthouse, written by Dee Macdonald and read by Jilly for SAGA Egmont. Part 1. Chapter 1. Falling in Love Again.
"It's so beautiful here I could stay forever,"
said Simon, stretching his legs out on the sun lounger.
"Life could be one long blissful holiday."
"And what exactly would you be using for money?" asked Tess. It had been Simon's bright idea to come down to Cornwall for their belated honeymoon, 18 months after their whirlwind wedding. Simon Sparrow was 62 and Tess was 63, blissfully happy to have found each other after ill-fated first marriages. Simon cherished childhood memories of wielding his bucket and spade on this dramatic coast. He'd started learning to surf round here, he'd got a tiny part in the first Poldark series, and he'd quaffed his first pint of bitter with his dad in the Port Merin Arms. Simon was, as are many actors, an incurable romantic, which is one of the many reasons Tess had fallen in love with him. At times she did wonder why on earth he'd fallen in love with her. Tess Mackenzie from Strathcoy in Scotland, who'd come to London, married and later divorced Jerry Templar after his ridiculous affair, had his 2 children, and found a lover some years later who'd unfortunately died and left her heartbroken. Tess would describe herself as being quite pleasant-looking, with her green eyes and rapidly greying hair, now an interesting mix of highlights and lowlights, thanks to a cut above back in Milbury, where she'd been living. But she had managed to shed 2 stone in order to look good at her daughter's wedding, which was where she met Simon. He'd whisked her off her feet and married her 3 months later, and she still had to pinch herself that this had really happened. After all the disasters with an internet dating site, it seemed like a miracle.
"We must explore the area,"
he said as he padded through the tiny kitchen of their belated honeymoon retreat, en route to the equally tiny bathroom, both of which had been tacked onto the back of the genuine fisherman's cottage which they'd rented for the week. The genuine fisherman had probably bought a nice semi somewhere, with an ensuite and central heating, as had apparently all the other fishermen who once inhabited Fisherman's Row, where the cottages were now rented out to tourists at exorbitant rates. But having to trundle down the narrow stairs several times a night for a pee had rapidly ceased to be a novelty for Simon. "It was your idea to rent an authentic little cottage," Tess reminded him. "We could have gone to a nice hotel somewhere, and you'd only have had to totter a few feet to the loo 3 times a night."
"Hotels are so soulless," Simon said. "When you've had to stay in them as often as I have, you're happy to forego the convenience of an ensuite, a hospitality tray, and a fridge full of overpriced booze."
Tess would have been extremely happy with an ensuite, a hospitality tray, and a fridge full of booze, whatever the price. But at least she didn't have to go to the loo several times a night. Yet. And it was bliss to lie in bed and listen to the thundering of the surf and the crying of the gulls. She was bowled over by the competing shades of turquoise of the sea, the glorious beach, and the sheer grandeur of the cliffs. She watched in awe as the surfers rode the waves, and she couldn't help but admire the big brawny lifeguards with their wetsuits and tousled hair, and dreamed of being young again, and wished it were now. How did they manage to race across the shingle barefoot? Not that she wasn't madly in love with Simon, of course, but some of these hunks, wow. Then it had rained non-stop for 3 days, and their ideas of further exploring the area in Simon's open-topped Triumph Stag had dissolved into the grey gloom. They squelched along the beach in waterproofs and Wellingtons, and got to know the Port Merin Arms very well indeed. The Port Merin Arms was reported to be an old smuggler's inn, complete with black beams and nicotine-stained walls, and a huge ingle nook in which an open fire was burning.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?